Chuck Cooperstein, how are you? If those don't know Chuck, he is the Dallas Mavericks longtime radio voice. He's also been a national college football and NFL voice with Westwood One. Are you doing any of those games right now?
Not doing any of it.
Those got to be all remote too. But Chuck has been with the Mavericks, and I thought with the theme of like get Jamaica to the Olympics in Paris 2024 and 24 for 24, I want to take kind of a look at the international game in this hour. So Chuck's going to lead us off from an NBA perspective. And then Josh Lloyd, who is the host of the #1 fantasy basketball podcast in the world, who actually lives in Australia and also hosts is involved in Australian basketball podcasts. So kind of an interesting little twist, right, in our global international world, that the #1 fantasy basketball podcast in the world comes out of Australia. And then we'll get Kevin Pelton to join us. He's the ESPN numbers geek, and I love talking to him. But also, just he's kind of tried to figure out how to translate international numbers into NBA numbers. So we'll talk about that. But Chuck, you've been around with us with Donnie Nelson really being one of the leaders, right, all the way back to Šarūnas Marciulionis and Lithuania. Sure. Take me back to some of your thoughts as this all went on, and we had this great international explosion, and hopefully Jamaica basketball is the next part of it. Of this game just becoming this global, and now your team is the most global today. But go back to the past of kind of how it's all happened in Dallas is obviously with Donnie Nelson been a hotbed of it.
Well, really, I mean, this is courtesy of David Stern and Boris Stankovic, who was the president of FIBA, which is the international governing body for basketball. And, after the 1988 Olympics, when the Americans did not win in Seoul, when they lost to Argentina in the semifinals and wound up winning the bronze, people were apoplectic here in the States. Like, we're not supposed to lose in basketball. The only other time we had lost in the Olympics was when the game was stolen from us in Munich in 1972. We eviscerate people. This is what we're supposed to do. And we didn't do it because we were playing with our college kids and everybody else was playing with, and especially the Soviets at that time, were playing with pros. And there was a feeling that there was not a level playing field. But, I mean, that was from a fan standpoint. But from Stankovic's standpoint, he thought that the only way that basketball could truly grow as an international sport was to allow NBA players to play in the Olympics. And thus the formation of the Dream Team, which did not come together very easily, but it did. And David Stern had a vision in becoming commissioner in 1983, I guess it was, to expand the game, to market the game beyond where we were. And this was an obvious way to do it. There had been some bursts of players who had come to the States and had success, but there wasn't any real significant flow of players. But what happened in Barcelona with the incredible success and popularity of the Dream Team was that people throughout Europe, especially, but of course it's now gone into the Pacific Rim, down to Australia, New Zealand, basically worldwide. I mean, basketball is the second most popular sport in the world behind soccer. But that was the germ, the germination of that got it all going. And so, when I think of Dirk Nowitzki then being drafted in June of 1998, and a particular talk show host in Dallas at that time, seeing that Paul Pierce was sitting at number 9 and available to be picked by the Mavericks, and freaking out at the moment of they acquired this guy from Germany. Yeah, he had a nice game in the Hoop Summit, but I mean, Paul Pierce was a sure thing. Paul Pierce was going to be an NBA All-Star. Paul Pierce could very well be a Hall of Famer. Who's this guy? And this was on the heels of the Nelsons drafting a kid named Chris Anstey from Australia the year before, that Nelly had proceeded to call the best running big man he had ever seen. he could run, but he couldn't really play otherwise. He was a hell of a guy, but he couldn't really play. And we're thinking, what is going on here, please? And of course, that was also the same day that they made the trade for Steve Nash from Phoenix when Dirk came in together. So, but Dirk was a handball player in Europe, not hitting Spaldings against the wall the way that you and I grew up playing handball. Team handball. That was Dirk's game. He was a tennis player. He loves and still loves tennis today. But,
I think that, Chuck, you just touched on something. The multi-sport athletes of the international players, whether it was Akeem Olajuwon, Tim Duncan swimming, whatever, if you talk to our trainers of why the injuries happen so much in the NBA, they talk about the young single sport athletes who don't have the ability of their joints to make other moves, particularly lateral, that everything's been NBA straight. And so that when the game speeds up and their angles change and that knee is, instead of being like this, is like this, it pops. Well, if you've played tennis, if you've played, I think of the two best players we've had recently, I mean, even the three best, two of them Americans. Donovan Mitchell was a baseball player. Right. Gordon Hayward was a tennis player. Rudy Gobert was a boxer, actually. Talk about some reach. Yeah.
So reach 7-1,
you think that jab might work at 7-9 reach right there? But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you make an interesting comment about how the international game's so different to some extent because all these guys have played something else.
But to that extent, and they might have played something else had the dream team not occurred.
Right.
And and then there were some who were of an age, who saw Drazen Petrovic play over here and was brilliant for the Nets, and obviously his life was cut short way too soon. But it was from there, that really it began. And then, you think about, a lot closer to home, but in Canada, with the decision of the NBA to expand into Canada with the Raptors and the Grizzlies, but really in Toronto, and then the drafting of Vince Carter, the same year that Dirk was drafted. But Vince Carter, I mean, you think about where Canada basketball is today, that is directly related to kids growing up watching Vince Carter be an 8-time All-NBA player or an 8-time All-Star in the NBA. Vince Carter is, really is a Canadian icon when you think about it. I mean, that's quite a ways from Delray Beach, Florida, but he's a Canadian icon. But that's where it all started. Donnie and Nelly basically was taught by Donnie, to really appreciate the European player, the European sensibility, and it appealed to their sensibilities of how they felt the game ought to be played. And they coached that game. Nelly coached that game, and in many ways, Rick Carlisle has coached that game. Certainly in the 12 years that he's been in Dallas, it's passing, it's movement, it's cutting, it's a 5-man game, as a result, I think you have international players certainly in Dallas that have benefited from that because it hasn't been nearly the adjustment for them coming to Dallas to play that it might be going some other places in the NBA where they might not be as attuned to the notion of playing 5-man games as opposed to playing a simple pick and roll or in the case, say, of the Rockets, just a lot of isolation basketball.
Chuck, let me ask you one more question, then I'll let you go. Thanks so much, Chuck Cooperstein, Dallas Mavericks radio voice. It is 24 hours of basketball conversation for the Jamaican basketball team's quest for Paris 2024. You can donate at JamaicaBasketball.com. Chuck, I think we talk about Dirk, we talk about Nash, we talk about Sarunas, we talk about Drazen Petrovic. To me, the sign of the international game is the Joe Ingles and the Maxi Klebers. When the regular rotation players became foreign players. Now, here's the question. Did the game change for them, or did their skill sets change the game that allowed those type of players to suddenly start coming into the league?
I think the game probably changed for them. I think that the game has evolved in such a way that it allows those types of players to be able to succeed. I don't think that those guys in and of themselves, their styles forced the game to change. But they certainly had the ability, the fundamentals to be able to make that work, and then from that base be able to build up their game to where they are really appreciated contributors. And indeed, certainly in Joe Ingles' case, I don't know where the Jazz are without him. I really think he's the glue to their team, and obviously Kleba is a really valuable rotation player. If he's playing 20 to 25 minutes a game, we found in the playoffs, when he had to play more because Porzingis was hurt, that that wasn't his strength. But as a 20 to 25 minute player in the league, he can really help you because he can shoot, he can roll, he can block shots from the weak side. He's a very valuable player that way.
Chuck, you're the best. I hope we do an R&R barbecue again. I hope
Definitely.
we do something together again.
Absolutely. I'll walk there right now.
I miss you, my man. I appreciate you taking the time. You're the first guy I always call. I love talking hoops and basketball with you. Stay safe, stay good. Best to your son, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate you, David. Take care. Take care, everybody. Good luck.
Chuck Cooperstein.